This is just out in the last few moments. The timing of it is interesting, and I'm sure will be noted by allies around the world. It is, as you say, the UK, US, and Australia. It's a joint defence pact partnership, which has been in operation for some time now. But this is the development, as you say, of hypersonic missile technology. It's been accelerated, the press note says, this work. It will be jointly accelerated between those three nations. That includes development, testing, and essentially trying to scale it up. These will be missiles that are faster than the speed of sound and can be launched from land, sea, or air. They will, and I quote from the UK side, put us at the forefront of battle-winning technology, but also help to maintain peace and security. They're also, these three countries, working to try and develop some resilient supply chains, because I think there is some concern with these shifting plates around the world, including the relationship with China and others, that you need those resilient supply chains in order to keep operating if there were to be a conflict.
Let's now get the thoughts of Kate McCann, the Times Radio political editor. Hello, Kate.
Hi, John.
Okay, can I just ask you first of all for your thoughts on this reporting in the Sun newspaper that President Biden, is not giving the thumbs up to British missiles being used in the way that American missiles now can be?
Yeah, as Harry was saying to you there earlier on, it's been the story that all of us have been trying to get to the bottom of today, because something has definitely shifted in the way Number 10 is talking about the possibility of Storm Shadow missiles. As you were setting out there, they are distinct to the American long-range missiles, which America has given the go-ahead for. With the Storm Shadows, they essentially need American technology, American GPS, in order to be used effectively by Ukraine. And that's been the stumbling block so far. I think there has been some concern on the American side about not having full control over how and when they would be used, and also whether it would trigger an escalation. I do think something has shifted on that front for all sides, actually. John Healey and President Biden and others over the last 24 hours are pointing to North Korean troops and also Putin's targeting of energy sort of installations in Russia as a real escalation of this conflict. But usually, John, as you know, in Westminster, when something's changing, it doesn't happen straight away. It happens over a period of time. And Number 10 today will not repeat what they have said previously about Storm Shadow. They are just saying we won't say anything at all. It's also worth me pointing out that John Healey has spoken to his American counterpart today and will be speaking to his Ukrainian counterpart later on too, on long-range missiles. So there could still be some movement, but as it stands at the moment, it does sound like America is reluctant to offer that support.
All right, Kate, that's good to get your thoughts on that. Now, have a listen to this, because we now have this from Keir Starmer speaking in Brazil on this subject. Let's have a listen.
I'm at the G20 with one message, which is that we must double down on our support for Ukraine. Tomorrow is day 1,000 of the conflict. That's 1,000 days of aggression from Russia and 1,000 days of sacrifice from Ukraine. So that is my clear message here. It's number one on my agenda. Obviously, I'm not going to get into operational details because the only winner, if we were to do that, is Putin, and I'm not prepared to do that.
Can you at least in principle say whether you'd like them to be green-lighted? Because I think you would.
I'm not going to get into operational details because Putin is the only winner in that situation. But I've been really clear for a long time now, we need to double down. We need to make sure Ukraine has what is necessary for as long as necessary, because we cannot allow Putin to win this war.
OK, well, let me quickly ask you about Russia. Have you spoken to Lavrov? President Putin's spokesperson has said the missile decision was adding fuel to the fire. Trump allies say the Biden missile decision could trigger World War III. How do you respond to that?
I haven't spoken to Russia, and I've got no plans to do so.
How do you respond to the risk of the escalation triggering World War III?
We have to support Ukraine in this. This is about the sovereignty of Ukraine, but it's also about our own freedoms. And that's why for 1,000 days we've stood with Ukraine and will continue to do so. My number one issue here at the G20 is to make sure that we absolutely double down on support for Ukraine for as long as it takes.
That's Keir Starmer speaking in Brazil just a short while ago. Kate McCann, our political editor, listening to that with us. So Kate, we heard there, didn't we, Keir Starmer being as guarded publicly as you're telling us that officials at Number 10 are being privately. And I guess we can understand why that might be the case, but there must be some disappointment at not being given the green light to use British missiles as American missiles are about to be used.
Yeah, I think it's quite unusual if you think about the language that the Prime Minister was using previously when we were in New York for the UN General Assembly and also in Washington just a couple of months ago talking about these Storm Shadow missiles. There was a lot more behind the scenes and certainly front of house pushing essentially for the US to join in this and to give Ukraine the support that is needed. Now, there may well be behind those scenes in those diplomatic conversations an acceptance or an agreement from the UK side that it's not Storm Shadow that will lead the way right now. It is these American long-range missiles, and we
Yes.
shouldn't lose sight of the fact that these have been approved for use. They were officially allowed to be used. Well, they were mooted in April. Ukraine will now be allowed to use them officially. They have a pretty significant range. They can really make a difference here. It may well be that, and none of us know the truth of this yet, but it may well be that that is the first stage, and that's why other allies, including the UK, are at the moment being very guarded when it comes to talking about Storm Shadow.
Right.
It's also worth just pointing out that we would never have expected, even if America had agreed to allow us to use GPS technology, we would never have expected or got a press conference, a statement, anything official from Number 10 or the Secretary of State for Defence on any level to confirm that they were going to be used. And that has long been the case because, of course, as you heard the Prime Minister say there, really it's only President Putin that benefits from that extra advance warning.
That is a really, really important point. In a moment, I can talk to Sir John McCall, General Sir John McCall, former Deputy Supreme Commander at NATO, on all of this. Before you go, though, Kate, some more news from the Aukus partnership. That's Britain, United States, and Australia on the development of new hypersonic missile technology.
Yeah, this is just out in the last few moments. The timing of it is interesting and I'm sure will be noted by allies around the world. It is, as you say, the UK, US and Australia. It's a joint defence pact partnership, which has been in operation for some time now. But this is the development, as you say, of hypersonic missile technology. It's been accelerated, the press note says, this work. It will be jointly accelerated between those three nations. That includes development, testing and essentially trying to scale it up. These will be missiles that are faster than the speed of sound and can be launched from land, sea or air. They will, and I quote from the UK side, put us at the forefront of battle-winning technology, but also help to maintain peace and security. They're also, these three countries, working to try and develop some resilient supply chains, because I think there is some concern with these shifting plates around the world, including the relationship with China and others, that you need those resilient supply chains in order to keep operating if there were to be a conflict.
Kate McCann, good to talk to you. Thank you. That's our political editor there. He's going to be joining me after 6 on Pina and Friends. Now, I want to welcome now Sir John McCall. General Sir John McCall, former Deputy Supreme Commander of NATO, who's live on the line. Hello to you, General.
Hello. Good evening.
Hi, evening to you. So what do you make of the news that America is allowing the use of American missiles into Russian targets, but not willing to, it seems, not willing to allow the same to be done with British missiles? Your take on the significance of that?
Well, I welcome it. However, I think it's long overdue. And I was listening to some of the interviews earlier, and the ban on their use within Russia is completely unnecessary and should never have been made in the first place. Russia is using Korean weapons and Iranian weapons in their illegal invasion of Ukraine, and it's therefore completely unnecessary for us to put a ban either on ATACMS or on Storm Shadow. It's very good to hear the Prime Minister's strong rhetoric on doubling down on support to Ukraine. But the fact of the matter is that we have been exhibiting dither and delay for months now over this issue, when we should have been exhibiting strength and determination. So it's very welcome, but it's overdue. And I hope that the ATACMS position is followed very shortly by a decision on Storm Shadow.
Indeed, and as we've been discussing, we shall see. It is at least a possibility. The use of these longer range missiles, though, General, is this a military game changer when we look at what happens on the battlefield?
Well, the short answer to that is probably no. It's not. It will make the prosecution of the war for Russia more difficult, in that they will have to reposition perhaps logistic bases, to move equipment from air bases. But given the number of the missiles, they're incredibly expensive. Storm Shadow, I think, is £750,000 for each missile. ATACMS is about £1 million for each missile. So they're relatively few, and they'll be going on to particular and well-chosen targets. So it will make it more difficult. but it will not change the nature of the conflict. What it will do, though, if we double down, as the Prime Minister has said, and we do give permission for Storm Shadow alongside ATACMS, it will show solidarity, it will show strength, it will determination as we move towards what is likely to be some kind of negotiated settlement as Mr. Trump moves into the White House.
And when you say that, are you now taking it as read, happily or not, that there will be a move towards some sort of negotiation when Donald Trump comes in? You assume he will force Ukraine to the table.
Well, that is what he said he's going to do. And he's surrounded, you look at his chosen defense secretary, his national security advisor, his vice president, they've all in different terms said the same thing, which is that they wish to see an early conclusion to the conflict in Ukraine, and they wish to see it predominantly handled as a European problem. Yeah. So I'm sure that's the direction of travel. In terms of exactly what that means, you've indicated that it's effectively a land peace deal, and I'm sure that will be part of it. But the degree to which the Americans continue to remain involved in the conflict is something which is unclear. If you look back to the Doha Agreement, which is the agreement under which they withdrew from Afghanistan, which was put together under the Trump administration, where effectively there was no deal. They simply walked away, and the allies had to follow them. That may well be a possibility. However, I think more likely is that Mr. Trump and his colleagues will look at what was in fact a debacle in Afghanistan and want to make sure that that does not happen again, particularly as they know that China, Iran, North Korea, and other authoritarian regimes around the world are looking to see exactly the way in which they conduct what Mr. Trump would describe as a deal.
Yeah, well, if it's likely that Donald Trump is going to force Ukraine to the table, whether Ukraine likes it or not, it then would surely make no sense for Vladimir Putin to follow through on any threat of massive escalation. He can wait and let, if you like, Donald Trump move the entire war closer to where he wants it to be.
He may draw that conclusion. However, I think there's also a number of other variables here, and one of them is Europe and other allies, and the way in which they step up to the plate to make sure that they demonstrate that behind the rhetoric that we've heard the Prime Minister and others come out with, there is a solid commitment to supporting Ukraine. And I think if Europe can show that, then there will be a greater desire on behalf of America to continue to stay the course in some form. And so I think there's a responsibility here for Europe to contribute to this dialogue as we move into the new administration and demonstrate that they are, as they say, determined to shoulder their share of the burden, both in terms of the ongoing conflict, but also in terms of the policing the peace that follows and the reconstruction of Ukraine. The greater the European commitment, I think the greater American commitment.
All right, General Sir John McCall, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, let's have a quick listen back to Keir Starmer. Okay, he was talking to Beth Rigby from Sky News there. You heard an extract from that conversation a little bit earlier on. We're going to be discussing it more after 6 o'clock right here on Times Radio on PNR and Friends.